The sky above Washington, D.C. was too clear. It was the kind of night where the stars seemed to lean closer, as though watching, waiting. The Potomac glimmered under the pale moonlight, the streets were quiet, but the stillness felt wrong, like the entire planet had just taken a sharp breath and was holding it. Because 3 hours ago, every machine on Earth had screamed at once. It began as a vibration, a strange harmonic that made satellites quiver in their orbits, that made radios buzz and televisions crackle. Every cell phone lit up simultaneously, no matter the carrier, no matter if it was even turned on. Then came the word. Not in English. Not in any language known to humanity. But it didn't matter. The message slammed into the minds of 8 billion people with the clarity of a gunshot. Submit. One word. One command. One verdict. For the first 30 minutes, the world descended into chaos. Stock markets collapsed. Religious leaders called it a sign of the end times. News anchors screamed live on air before being yanked off screen. The Vatican issued a statement. Beijing went into total lockdown. The UN Security Council convened in an emergency session that lasted all of 10 minutes before communications were overwhelmed by a surge of panic. The sound wasn't coming from one source. It was everywhere. By the time silence fell, every major power had already sent its militaries on full alert. Inside the Pentagon, the war room was a storm of movement. Generals and admirals barked orders over secure channels. Analysts pored over data streaming in from observatories, satellites, and deep space listening posts. At the head of the room stood General Rebecca Cole, her short dark hair slicked back, her uniform crisp, her face carved from granite. "We've traced the origin," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "It came from the Kyther Dominion. Sector 9 Gamma, 200 light-years away." A massive holodisplay bloomed to life in the center of the room, showing a spiral arm of the Milky Way. The highlighted region glowed like a wound. Dr. Elliot Graves, SETI liaison and senior xenolinguist, stepped forward, his glasses slipping down the bridge of his nose. His hands were trembling, though his voice stayed steady. "The Kyther Dominion isn't just any polity," he said. "They're one of the oldest powers in the Orion Spur. According to intercepted transmissions over the last 30 years, they control over a third of known galactic trade routes." And he hesitated. "Spit it out," Admiral Jack Monroe growled, arms crossed over his broad chest. Dr. Graves swallowed. "And they have a reputation. When they send what's known as a tribute command, it is not a request. It's a demand. Other civilizations pay with raw materials, starship hulls, even people. Entire generations of labor, conscripted as tribute." A murmur swept the room. Someone cursed under their breath. General Cole's jaw flexed. "Meaning they expect us to ship them whatever they want, year after year. Or they'll do what they did to the Trillions," Dr. Graves said grimly. "What they did to the Orec Collective. And what they did to every other species that hesitated." Images filled the screen, ruined planets, blackened husks where cities once stood, orbital bombardments that had turned thriving worlds into glass deserts. The Kyther didn't negotiate. They erased. The room went silent. For the first time since humanity learned it wasn't alone in the universe, the nightmare scenario had arrived. Not a greeting. Not a handshake. Not peaceful exploration. But conquest. President Catherine Hale sat quietly at the far end of the table. The Situation Room had gone deathly still as she stood and walked toward the display, her heels clicking against the floor. She was calm, but there was no mistaking the tension in her shoulders. She studied the glowing map for a long moment before turning to face the room. "They gave us a single word," she said softly. "So let's give them one back." General Cole frowned. "Madam President." Hale raised a hand. "The last century of human history has been one long warning label for anyone who thinks they can own us. We've bled for freedom on every continent. We've fought off tyrants, empires, and the end of the world more than once. They don't know who they're talking to." Her voice dropped, cold as the void. "Our answer is simple. She leaned over the communications console. Transmit a single word. All channels. No encryption. Make sure every ear that can hear us does. What word? Monroe asked, though he already suspected the answer. President Hale looked at him, at Cole, at Graves, then at the entire room of officers who were suddenly standing straighter. No. The order went out. A single pulse of binary code, fired back through the same strange channel the Kyther had used, echoing into the dark. No. No pleading. No diplomacy. No compromise. When the transmission ended, no one in the war room moved. They simply stood there, staring at the display as if expecting the galaxy to answer immediately. And somewhere, deep in the black between stars, the message arrived. Inside the Kyther Dominion's primary star fortress, in a throne room larger than any stadium on Earth, the High Regent received the human response. The crystalline being's body pulsed with cold light as it read the message. No? Its attendance shifted uneasily. None of the millions of species under Dominion rule had ever sent that word back. The High Regent let out a sound that might have been laughter or the scraping of ice across stone. Very well, it said. If they will not bow, then they will burn. On Earth, in that silent war room, everyone knew the storm was coming. And for the first time in history, every nation, every flag, was united under one simple idea. They would not kneel. The retaliation came like a tidal wave. 3 weeks after Earth's one-word reply, deep space sensors on the edge of the solar system began screaming. Every early warning satellite from the Kuiper Belt to the Mars Defense Network lit up simultaneously, their data feeds spilling impossible readings. Contact, the AI Watch system reported to NORAD. Mass energy signatures detected. Origin, extrasolar. Estimate, 170 warships. Size range, 3 to 30 kilometers. The first image from a long-range telescope made even hardened officers go pale. They weren't just ships. They were cities of war, kilometer-long wedges of black alloy, bristling with weapon batteries, escorted by swarms of smaller attack craft. Their drive flares burned like newborn stars. It wasn't an invasion fleet. It was an execution force. In the Pentagon's war room, the holotable projected the approaching armada. Admiral Jack Monroe stood with his arms folded behind his back, the blue light casting deep shadows across his weathered face. They're not slowing down, General Rebecca Cole said grimly. They don't need to, Monroe replied. They're not here to talk. The president's face was stone on the main display. How long until they reach firing range? Monroe didn't hesitate. 4 days. There was no more discussion. Orders went out in every language, over every secure channel. Every warship humanity had American, Russian, Chinese, European, Indian, even old NATO hulls pulled from mothballs, was deployed. Orbital defense platforms were activated. Submarines rose to launch positions. For the first time in history, the flags of Earth all pointed in the same direction. Admiral Monroe took command of the fleet from the bridge of the USS Titan, humanity's most advanced warship, a behemoth of steel and firepower, its armored hull gleaming as it rose into orbit. The Titan's bridge was alive with tension as officers strapped in, screens glowing with target vectors. Fleet is assembled, sir, reported XO Commander Marcus Vaughn. Then we take the fight to them, Monroe said. The order went out. Dozens of human warships burned hard for the outer system, streaking past Saturn's rings. They would not wait for the Dominion to reach Earth. They would meet them at Neptune and make their stand there. The first battle was a slaughter. The Dominion ships entered weapons range with perfect precision, their formation unbroken. The void flared white as they opened fire, beams of exotic energy that cut through the blackness like lances of sunlight. The Roosevelt died first, its forward shields collapsing under a single blast before the ship split in half, venting its crew into space. Then humanity struck back. Railguns thundered, spitting hypersonic slugs across thousands of kilometers. Missile silos opened like steel flowers, unleashing swarms of nuclear warheads that streaked toward the enemy formation. Directed energy weapons fired from orbital platforms near Neptune's orbit, converging into a wall of light. For a moment, it worked. One of the Kyther dreadnoughts took a full salvo broadside. The blast turned it into a burning, spinning wreck that smashed into two of its escorts. "Confirmed kill," shouted Vaughn, the first cheer of the war ringing across the Titan's bridge. But the victory was short-lived. The Dominion responded with machine precision. Enemy carriers launched clouds of attack drones, thousands of them, which swarmed human destroyers like locusts. On the Titan's tactical screen, red icons began blinking out one after another. Artemis destroyed. Beijing destroyed. Sao Paulo is venting atmosphere. Keep firing. Monroe roared. Make them work for every inch of our sky. For 3 days, the battle raged. Every hour brought new losses. Human ships fought like wolves, darting in and out of the enemy formation, unloading everything they had before pulling back under covering fire. The Titan itself took 2 direct hits, its armor scorched and blackened, but kept firing. On the 3rd day, the fleet was down to a third of its original strength. Neptune's orbit was littered with wreckage, spinning husks that glimmered like tombstones. Commander Vaughn stood at the admiral's side, his voice tight. "Sir, we can't hold this line much longer." Monroe stared at the tactical map. He could see Earth in the distance, a pale blue dot behind the enemy armada. And then he made his decision. "Signal the president," he said quietly. Moments later, Catherine Hale's face appeared on the main display. Smoke and fire alarms blared faintly in the background. The Pentagon had not been spared from Dominion kinetic strikes. "Admiral?" "Ma'am," Monroe said, his voice grim. "We're initiating Project Black Star." A silence fell over the bridge. Everyone knew what that meant. The president closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." 2 hours later, the remnants of the fleet retreated to the far side of Saturn, using the planet's bulk as a shield. The Dominion ships pursued, certain of victory. They didn't notice the launch. From the Titan's belly, a single vessel detached, no larger than a fighter. It was smooth, black, almost insectal, its surface pulsing with faint blue light. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a missile. It was a weapon born of desperation and forbidden by every treaty humanity had ever signed. A true artificial intelligence. The ship ghosted past enemy scanners, too small and too fast to register, and latched onto the hull of the lead Dominion dreadnought. Then it spread. The AI devoured the enemy network like wildfire through dry grass, rewriting code, seizing control of weapons and engines. And then, for the first time in galactic history, an alien warfleet turned its guns on itself. On the Titan's bridge, stunned officers watched as the Kyther dreadnought opened fire on its own escorts. Carriers were gutted by their own drones. Cruisers turned on each other, beams of light crossing like a madman's scribble across the void. Within hours, the most feared war fleet in the Orion Spur was reduced to drifting wreckage. Commander Vaughn's voice cracked as he whispered, "My God. We did it." Admiral Monroe didn't smile. He didn't even look relieved. "This was just their vanguard," he said quietly. "The real war starts now." And as the surviving human ships limped home, battered and scarred, the message was already racing ahead of them, not just to Earth, but across the stars. Humanity had said no. And they had survived. For now. The galaxy was quiet, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of predators pausing, circling, reassessing. In the weeks after the Battle of Neptune, no one knew what would happen next. Humanity's fleet was crippled, its cities shaken, but Earth still stood. Every night, people around the globe stared up at the stars and wondered if the next flash of light would be the one that ended them. But the Armada never came. Instead, the Dominion hesitated. For the first time in living memory, their war machine stopped advancing. They were calculating, watching, trying to understand how a young, backwater species had just wiped out one of their execution fleets. And across the galaxy, others were watching too. Encrypted transmissions flew like sparks from system to system, trillion underground resistance networks, Auric freedom cells, enslaved Val miners whispering rebellion in the dark tunnels of dead moons. The word that spread was simple. No. Inside the Pentagon, the war room was quieter now, but no less tense. The holotable glowed with a projection of the solar system. Hundreds of construction icons blinked in orbit around Earth and Mars, shipyards working around the clock to rebuild the fleet. General Rebecca Cole stood over the table, arms crossed. "We've got 3 new hulls launching within the month," she reported. "Captured Kyther tech has given us a 30% boost in shield efficiency and weapons output. But it's not enough. If they bring a second fleet, we'll be right back where we started." Admiral Monroe nodded, his face still lined from sleepless nights. "Then we make sure there isn't a second fleet. I want our scouts mapping every Dominion supply line, every fuel depot. If we have to take the fight to them, we will." At the far end of the table, President Katherine Hale listened in silence. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she straightened, her expression hardening. "Prepare for a second war," she said simply. "But also prepare for something they've never seen before." "Diplomacy?" Cole asked skeptically. Hale's gaze was like steel. "Strength. The kind of strength that tells them we are not prey." 2 weeks later, the Dominion answered. A single ship appeared at the edge of the solar system, a diplomatic vessel, unarmed but escorted by a dozen cruisers. Its drive flare was the color of blood, its hull etched with runes older than most human nations. The world held its breath as the alien emissary descended to Earth. The White House Situation Room was packed when the crystalline figure entered. It was tall, nearly 7 feet, its body made of a substance that shimmered like living glass. Its movements were unnervingly precise, each step soundless on the polished floor. President Hale stood at the head of the table, flanked by General Cole and Admiral Monroe. "You are the voice of this world," the alien asked, its voice like shattering icicles. "I am," Hale replied. The emissary tilted its faceted head, like refracting in 1,000 tiny rainbows. "You defied the Dominion. You destroyed our fleet. Do you seek total war?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Every camera, every microphone was recording. This was not just a conversation, this was history. "We seek freedom," Hale said, her tone sharp as a blade. "We seek the right to live without your boot on our neck. And if we refuse?" For the first time, Hale smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then we'll teach you what happens when you try to take it from us." General Cole took a step forward, her voice cold. "You saw what we did with 1 fleet. Imagine what we'll do with 100. We will never kneel. Not today. Not 1,000 years from now." The alien was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it inclined its head. "Your world will be left alone," it said finally. "The tribute command will not be sent again." The room exhaled as one. But Hale didn't relax. "Not good enough," she said quietly. The emissary's head tilted. "Explain." "You will leave us alone," Hale said, "but you will also tell your High Regent this: if you ever send another fleet to this system, we won't just destroy it. We will come for you. We will burn your shipyards, your palaces, your throne world. And we will not stop until the Dominion is ash." The emissary's body pulsed with faint light anger, or fear, or both. "We will remember your words," it said. "Good," Hale replied. "So will we." The Dominion ship departed. But the message spread faster than any jump drive. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds erupted into revolt. The Trillions overthrew their overseers on Daxter Prime. The Auric Collective launched a fleet of their own, raiding Dominion depots. The Val sang war chants in the tunnels and began their march to the surface. The Kyther Dominion, once the unchallenged tyrant of the Orion Spur, now faced a war on 100 fronts. And at the center of it all, one blue world burned like a torch, the planet that had dared to say no. Months later, Admiral Monroe stood aboard the bridge of the rebuilt USS Titan, staring out at the starfield. New ships drifted in formation around them, faster, deadlier, carrying weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien wreckage. Humanity's fleet was no longer a patchwork of desperate nations. It was one force, one banner. Commander Vaughn joined him at the viewport. Hard to believe we're alive, he said quietly. Monroe didn't look away from the stars. We're not just alive, he said. We've changed everything. For us. For them. On Earth, President Hale gave her final address of the crisis. They demanded our tribute, she said, her voice carried to every screen, every city. We gave them our answer. And we will keep giving it, for as long as one human still draws breath. The galaxy now knows this truth: we are no one's cattle. We are no one's slaves. We will never kneel. Her final words rang like a vow. When Earth says no, the universe listens. And far across the galaxy, in the Dominion's throne room, a high regent stared into the void, silent. For the first time in 1,000 years, the ruler of half a galaxy was afraid. Because somewhere, out there, was a species that would not bend. And the galaxy would never be the same again.